Welcome to the 129th season of the Canadian Club Toronto, Canada's podium. For over a century, this stage has united visionaries and leaders from politics, business, community, and the arts to share insights on the most pressing issues of our time. And with Canada in a pivotal moment, it's more important than ever that we come together.
We've been having important discussions and debates around this podium in this country for well over a century. I call this a historic podium of record.
Our club's always been a forum for visionaries, public figures, and decision makers to command attention to the issues of our time.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. And so I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Good afternoon once again, members and guests, and a warm welcome to those joining us online. I'm Shazanne Chu, President of Canadian Club Toronto, and your host for today's conversation. As our province and country look to expand energy capacity and reduce emissions, Ontario Power Generation is demonstrating how innovation and partnership can deliver clean, reliable, made-in-Canada energy solutions. Our ability to bring these conversations to Canada's podium is made possible through the generosity of our partners and sponsors. Today's event is presented by Tories LLP. Our event sponsors are Aecon, Candu Energy Inc., CIBC, and PwC Canada. We are also grateful to our season sponsor, the Canadian Bankers Association, and our official airline sponsor, Air Canada. Canadian Club Toronto is proud to partner with Canada's Forest Trust Corporation for the third consecutive year as our exclusive nature partner. Through this partnership, we're planting and protecting trees in Canada's forests to capture carbon, support biodiversity, and enhance ecosystems. We are also delighted to welcome students from Toronto Metropolitan University's The Dais. It's wonderful to have you with us. Where are you? Oh, there. Before we move to our discussion, a quick reminder to please visit canadianclub.org for information about upcoming events, membership details, and on-demand recordings. And please share today's experience on your preferred social media platform. We love to see your reflections from Canada's podium. And you'll no doubt have questions for our wonderful guests. Please use the question cards on your tables and our team will collect them for our moderator. And for those joining us remotely, please use the Submit a Question button on the right-hand side of your screen. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Krista Hill, partner at Tories LLP, to formally introduce our guest speaker. Krista, Canada's podium is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm truly honored to be introducing Nicolle today. We met over 25 years ago working together on the original Bruce lease transaction and have been great friends since. No one was happier than me when Nicolle was appointed OPG's president and CEO earlier this year. Although maybe, Nicolle, you were happier, but then I'm second. And what a time to be CEO of OPG. As Canada moves forward with ambitious plans to position itself as an energy superpower, we will need to greatly expand our sources of clean, reliable electricity. And OPG is poised to play a leading role in this regard. Whether it's embarking on the first SMR in the G7 at OPG's Darlington site, or early works considering and assessing Wesleyville as a future nuclear generation site, or significant hydroelectric refurbishments and developments, and on and on and on, OPG will be there to meet the province's quickly growing demand for clean, reliable electricity. And there's no one better than Nicolle to lead OPG during these exciting times. Nicolle has had a long career with OPG, covering virtually all aspects of the company. Prior to appointment as CEO, Nicolle was OPG's Chief Operating Officer and was responsible for overseeing one of the largest, most diverse generating portfolios in North America. In addition, she has held a range of roles throughout the company, as well as senior-level positions in corporate business development and strategy, renewable generation, and the energy-related commercial contracts and functions such as energy trading and market affairs. Nicolle specializes in creating an inclusive business culture, one that embraces safety, which is paramount at OPG, performance, and operational excellence, while also fostering innovation. Under her leadership, OPG successfully delivered a strategic plan that included executing $5 billion worth of acquisitions and building an electrification strategy. In addition, Nicolle is a champion for Indigenous reconciliation and working with Indigenous communities, companies, and businesses to achieve OPG's Reconciliation Action Plan commitments. We all look forward to hearing from Nicolle today about OPG's ambitious plans. Joining Nicolle on the stage will be the Honourable Lisa Raitt, who will lead the Q&A discussion. Lisa, as I think most people in the room know, is Vice Chair of Global Investment Banking at CIBC Markets, and she focuses on clients in the energy, infrastructure, and industrial sectors. Of course, prior to her current role, Ms. Raitt was President and CEO of the Toronto Port Authority and was elected to the House of Commons first in 2008 as a member of the Conservative Party, where she went on to hold 3 senior portfolios, serving as Minister of Natural Resources, Minister of Labour, and Minister of Transport. So please join me in welcoming Nicolle and Lisa to the stage.
Nicolle, you're coming out here with no notes.
No notes.
No notes at all. That's brave.
I'll make it up if I don't know.
I have. No one's going to correct you on that. I have many, many notes. One thing that, first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
And welcome to everybody here today. One of the, when we had our pre-chat, one of the things that I remarked was the fact that we're very similar in terms of what keeps us balanced. Maybe we have sons that are almost exactly the same ages, 24 and 21, and yours are?
24 and 21.
So they're often full of advice. I get that a lot. So what advice did your sons give you when you took over the new role?
Well, it's interesting. They have a very perverse view of what I do each day, and it starts from, they were actually in workplace daycare with me from when they were very little. So they spent a lot of time in our office, and then, of course, we've all experienced COVID, and your kids got a first-hand view of what you do during COVID, and their view is all I do is talk.
Yep.
Mom, you don't actually do anything. You just talk. Like, don't you do any work? So that's what I get is all I do is talk.
Fully understand that. Speaking of which, we're going to talk to each other, but we're also hopefully going to get some questions from the audience. Chris already told you that, or Chizzy already told you that there are cards on your table. You can write your questions in. I'm only going to say what I've heard other moderators say. Please write legibly so that I can actually read them. I did not bring my reading glasses up here, so a font bigger than tiny would be appreciated as well. But we look forward to your questions too. So, you know, we kind of talked about it in the opening comments, but my God, the world has changed fundamentally when you think about energy, right? I mean, when I was Minister of Natural Resources back in 2008 to 2010, we were dealing with Fukushima. Actually, we started with the nuclear renaissance, and then it ended up all kind of collapsing around us, and I'm going to touch wood as I say that because I don't want that to happen again. But how has OPG's approach changed as the world has changed when it comes to energy and energy security and fossil fuels?
Yeah, it's been amazing. When I think back, even a year ago, as I was preparing to take on this role, compared to now, like I feel like, did you have one of those dreams in university where you dreamt that you showed up for exam and realized it wasn't the subject that you studied for?
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like I studied for engineering and I'm in a geopolitical economics exam and not quite sure what to do with it. But so yeah, it has been a very quick shift for us, and really the shift has been, you know, we've always seen our role as keeping the lights on.
Yeah.
And really, when you look at today's environment, we are a significant driver of economic development and energy security. And so we need to shift and recognize a much, much broader role, both in Ontario and in Canada, because that's really what I think the country is looking at us and saying, if we're going to lead nuclear, you know, it's on that SMR site that we start that journey. So, yeah, it's a much bigger role than I had certainly expected when I came in. But when I look at, you know, our operations team focused on reliably, safely operating our assets while they prepare for refurbishing and rebuilding all of our assets. So almost every single one of our stations, including our 66 hydro stations, will get refurbished over the next 10 to 15 years. So our ops team is ready for that, and our projects team is very focused on continuing to prove you can build nuclear and hydro on time and on budget. And so I do think we're well situated to be that lever that the country needs right now for us to be able to tackle our tricky trade environment.
And it's neat how you say Canada, but you also fulfill a role internationally in a sense as well. Tell us a little bit about the interest, for example, that we've seen coming from other countries.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the nuclear industry is very global, but we have had pretty much every nuclear country on our site in the last 12, 18 months. So everyone is looking at us and saying, we need to understand how you're doing that, because every country needs to then turn to their own country and double the amount of nuclear, triple the amount of nuclear that they have. And so we feel an immense amount of pressure on us, and I've switched sort of, you know, we talk about feeling that pressure, but the language I've started to use with those CEOs or heads of state is, we're in this together, so when we need something, you need to pick up my phone call. Because this is something we need to be able to do together, and our success is the success globally of the industry.
Yeah, they're not looking at you from a competitive point of view. The industry is different, right? The sector is a little bit different in how they view successes around the world.
Yeah, and how we work together. That's sort of fundamental to how the nuclear industry has grown and operates, is we benchmark one another, we share everything that goes well or goes wrong on a nuclear site is disseminated within 24 hours. So you always know this global team is with you along the way. And if we run into a problem, we know who to call. And, you know, in Ontario, that is definitely Bruce. You know, we work very closely with Bruce Power, and I think that's a bit of our superpower, is the way that we collaborate, so that, you know, if they're doing a refurbishment, hit a problem, we don't have to learn the same lesson. And if we hit that same problem, we can call them and we can have their tooling on our site in a matter of hours. Like, that's what we need to be successful as we're going down this path.
And you all learned from Point Lepreau.
And we all learned from Point Lepreau.
Which was the refurbishment that caused most of my gray hair. I was still there at the time. But you know, globally is important. It's great that we have all these partners around the world, but it's about safety at the end of the day. That's kind of what binds everyone together. And there's no place more important to talk about safety than in local communities. And OPG has, I think, a really great reputation when it comes to working with local communities and now adding, we heard in the intro, adding in Indigenous communities and Indigenous relationships. So what's been your approach in terms of working with local and with Indigenous communities, both for either new builds or ongoing operations or refurbishments?
Yeah, I think it starts with open engagement. Certainly from a community perspective, being able to show, you know, whether it's a nuclear plant or, you know, our most recent experience is on natural gas, where our Atura Power subsidiary is looking to build a plant in the municipality of St. Clair and just got municipal approval for that. And they did that by, first and foremost, showing the benefit to the community. So yes, they will bring local jobs. There's an economic development angle of electricity and making sure that your community is not bottlenecked, so that when someone wants to come and build in your community, you're not restricted by the grid. And so there's an economic development angle to it, and then there's new revenue. So that's one piece. And then I think there's an education piece on understand how all the different technologies work and why they're all important. And certainly for gas, that has been probably one of our bigger hurdles, is to explain to people why we still need gas on the system. You know, it is not, it's not that it's anti-climate change. It is because you have to have the flexibility in the system to enable people to bring their EVs and plug them in and to build, you know, building heating, electrify the building heating. And so to build all of that, you have to have that flexible natural gas. And once people understand that, then that's a much easier path to getting the approvals. The First Nations side is an interesting one, because I would say we have been partners with First Nations on projects for probably 15 years. But yet we are still very much on a journey of learning and growing. And so how we did projects in the past, where, you know, we develop a hydro project and we take it to them and say, you know, here's the 3 impacts it's going to have, and we need you to sign these 5 permits, and will you be our equity partner? Doesn't work. And so we've really shifted the way we approach it. And when you look at our Wesleyville project or the Moose River Basin, we're approaching it like, hey, we have an idea, let's develop it together. So let's really understand what the potential is, what those impacts may be, how we can manage that and build it together. And on the Moose River Basin, that one in particular, we're using a co-planning structure where the Moose Cree and TTN are actually the project leads. So we'll be 50-50 partners, but they're leading the project. And we are the technical experts who can help them understand the impacts and help them design the plant, but they are the proponent who's leading that project. And I think that's a great way to start looking at how you get a lot of this stuff done.
Yeah. You've got some other big projects, though. Like, I would say ambition is a word that comes to mind when I take a look at everything OPG is doing. So you've got new nuclear, you've got refurbishment happening at Pickering, you've got lots of hydro projects. How are you making sure that you're not spread too thin?
I think it's our new normal. So you're right. We are, you know, finishing. We have not yet completed Darlington refurbishment, so I keep reminding the team we need to see it through to the end. But right now, it's on budget and ahead of schedule. So we're very proud of that project. We're preparing to go into Pickering refurb. So we are building facilities now as part of early works for that refurbishment, and we'll seek approvals from our shareholder in the coming months for that one. But then we're also, as you say, we're refurbishing our hydro fleet. We are currently today have 3 hydro plants under construction. We also have a battery plant and a new gas plant under construction and a hydrogen plant. So, and that's in addition to the SMR that seems to have made us famous globally. So we do have a lot going on. We have a phenomenal team that can manage that, and we've had time to build out that team. And I would say our confidence comes from refurbishment and what we've been able to prove we can do in refurbishment, as well as on our hydro projects. So we don't talk a lot about our hydro projects, but we just completed a close to $2 billion dam safety project on Lower Matagami River in the north, on time and on budget. And so it's a great example of what we need to get good at to be able to then go and build in the Moose River Basin, because it's a camp environment, it's very remote. How do you manage? How do you provide adequate oversight? How do you do that? That's a good step for us then to be able to go to the Moose River Basin and know and have the confidence that we can execute on it. Same with Darlington refurbishment. We have proven that we can take lessons learned and really apply them from one unit to the next and get really good so that the fourth unit will come in on budget and ahead of schedule. And we've been ahead of schedule on each unit along the way. So that's what gives us the confidence to be able to take on the SMR challenge. And it's very similar. The first one's first of a kind. It's gonna be tough. And we're gonna make sure we understand what we're learning there and how we're gonna apply it. And we're already in that process. Like, we are already taking learnings from our early days on the SMR and already thinking about how do we shift now for units 2, 3, and 4 to get these lessons in place to get better. And so that's sort of how we approach that big, broad capacity issue.
What about skills, though? How are you doing in terms of making sure that you have those scientific, engineering, finance skills coming out into your system? Because you probably have like an insatiable appetite for human resources in a kind of a way when you hear all these projects.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're very careful with that. We have hired significantly in the last year and a half. We do need to make sure that when we hire, we're using people efficiently. And so, you know, to bring in hundreds and hundreds of new grads and not be able to actually absorb them into the culture and get them efficient very quickly is not helpful. And so we are doing it in a very measured way. We are spending a lot more time than we ever have thinking about how do we get kids excited about trades? How do we get enough engineers and project managers in place and thinking about it now so that 5 years from now, when they graduate, we can grab them and take them. So, you know, that is a key piece of what we're thinking about. In fact, I had the opportunity a couple weeks ago to be at a press conference where we announced our whatnext.ca. Everyone should go. There's my plug, whatnext.ca. Great website that really is meant to start to educate. So it talks about all the different technologies, you can go in there, but another element of it is it has career paths. And so you can go in and say, I really like working with my hands and building things. I really like numbers and how they all add up. And you can sort of, based on those traits, the website will actually give you a career path in energy to help you understand, hey, maybe I should look into this. So those students, wherever they were in the back, I encourage you to go to that website because, you know, it will help you understand maybe this is a path for me and how do I start to make sure I get to the right co-ops and that type of thing so that you've got a career. Because we certainly have a lot of jobs coming up and need all the best resources.
So one of the things that I find really interesting is maybe 4 years ago, there was some advertising that OPG did. And you did it kind of in a cartoony kind of way where you had very simplistic, easy to understand information about nuclear in particular. And I don't know if it's caused it or if it's just coincidence, but you know, the younger generation does not have a problem with nuclear energy at all. Are you finding that?
Yes.
Like eyes open, ears open, embracing it without a problem. Is it a Simpsons thing, do you think? Do you think they accept it because of Simpson? I've been trying to figure out what it is.
No, I think because they've grown up with a different problem, which is climate change, right?
Yeah.
And so they have a very different paradigm than people who maybe grew up in the 80s, when there was nuclear accidents, and that's sort of their frame of reference. And so I do think we have very good public support for nuclear. We don't generally have a challenge when it comes to public acceptance. Certainly we've seen it on the SMR. Interestingly, our SMR, we got our license to construct in April, and every time we've gone to get a major nuclear license through the history of OPG, they have gone through a judicial review. So you get the license, and then immediately somebody says, well, wait a minute, we need to go have another area of government review this. And so, honestly, as new CEO, I was like, okay, board, yeah, we're going to get our license, but remember this whole judicial review process. Don't freak out. And it's the first license that we didn't get. Nobody asked for a judicial review, and I would say that's because public perception has dramatically changed, so you don't have those anti-nuclear environmental groups winding things up. And we had a First Nation partner that we had brought along on the journey, and they were supportive with us. So, I think that in my mind is the best piece of evidence I can point to say the world has truly shifted in its perception of nuclear.
Yeah. And you mentioned climate change, which is a really good segue into the second part of the question, which is natural gas, which you've mentioned already in terms of getting permission for the St. Clair. Public support seems to be there. I think it's coming back, given the circumstances that we're feeling right now with our friends to the south being so difficult on our economy in general. But what are you looking at when it comes to natural gas?
I've always fundamentally believed it has a critical role to play. It is absolutely the bridge we need. Without natural gas, the entire system becomes less flexible, less reliable, and we just can't add new manufacturing. We can't electrify what we want to electrify. So natural gas is critical. And so I would say, yes, it is. It's interesting because it's a harder battle than nuclear, which, if you'd gone back 10 years, it would have been the exact opposite. But I think with education, people are starting to understand that for a period of time, we need natural gas. And I think people are also feeling we're at a pivot point right now where we need to go on economic development and we need to go hard. And hydro and nuclear and all of these baseload generating, they take time. And so we're ahead of the game because we started the SMRs, but it takes a long time to develop those. And so you got to have something, if we're going to grab that opportunity today around AI, around new manufacturing, and really keep our economy going, we have to put gas on the system to get us through.
And the Halton Hills facility is in my neighborhood.
Oh, yes.
Ironically, it's next to the Toronto Premium Outlets, and I think the two of them go together quite well. Keep one going as well as the other.
I always debate when I go out there, which way should I go? Should I stop at the outlets or go to the plant?
Nicolle, it's an easy choice.
It's a hard choice for me.
It is a very easy choice. You're just thinking with your OPG brain, that's all. So we've talked about all of these projects. What about the financing? How are we going to pay for everything?
Yeah, it's interesting because it traditionally is not a big worry for OPG. We create a lot of cash, we reinvest that cash, that's been our life, and we're in a very different situation. And so, that's one of the things coming into the CEO role that was very different from, the last CEO in the last 5 years, was we got to have a financing strategy. And so we have a strategy in place. I think this quarter is going to be critical for us. There's a number of pieces that will fall into place, and that will all culminate in our rate case filing. So we will file with the OEB for an adjustment to our rates from 27 to 2031 So a 5-year window, and it will be the largest rate case ever filed. This is one of the largest ones that I don't ever want to win again. But we will be the largest rate case ever filed. So that is very important to us. It will provide that stability. So getting through that and getting all of these other pieces in place from both the provincial government and the federal government. We've been waiting for tax credits for a very long time, and so expect that those will come to fruition and really be able to set us down a path. And so it's been interesting. And there's other things, internally. You may have read that we did sell our Eagle Creek renewable platform, which was our U.S. hydro platform, and that was a tough decision, but critical for us as we look at the amount of money we need to spend in Ontario. We need to be able to repatriate that cash and reinvest it in Ontario. So we are making decisions like that as part of this broader financing strategy to make sure that we are stable and set up to execute.
Yeah. You mentioned about selling the platform in the United States, but there's a lot of cooperation across. There are pockets of real contributions between the United States and OPG, Tennessee Valley, for example.
Yes. Yeah. In the nuclear industry, I would say, transcends politics in many ways. So yes, we do have a partnership with Tennessee Valley Authority on the SMR. So they are also building the same SMR. We have a technology collaboration agreement where we're actually sharing in the costs of designing the reactor, as well as Poland. Yeah. So we are really looking at, it's interesting to be, OPG and be looking at how are we growing globally as well. And so partner with Poland, partnered with TVA to really figure out how do we build a fleet of SMRs, because our goal is not, let's build 4, they'll produce power. Our goal is to have that be the SMR that the rest of the world builds. And therefore, the supply chain that we've built in Ontario that can actually construct, can manufacture all the parts is in Ontario. And then as Poland looks to build 20 SMRs, they look to Ontario and they say, your reactor pressure vessel, why would I go to a new company when I know I can get it manufactured to the right level of quality here? And so it's really a much bigger, broader economic development play in being able to go first, but establish that supply chain and then really go global.
And you've done that with refurbishment already. 90%, I think, of the purchases for the refurbs are coming from a local supply chain.
Yes, we have a very made in Canada focus. And so, it was interesting when the trade war hit and we sort of stepped back and said, but it really didn't have that big of an impact on us, because 90% of what we spend is spent in Canada. And when you think about the sheer numbers, we spend $3 billion on operations and maintenance a year, and 5 to 6, now leaning towards $7 billion a year in capital. So it is a significant amount of money that we spend right here in Ontario and in broader Canada.
Yeah, and companies manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, relying upon this stuff.
And it's interesting because we're not satisfied with 90%. We're still going after the remaining 10%. And so we've taken a different strategy, for instance, on procurement, that we've started to look at things from a much longer time frame. So rather than just go and buy what we need for this year, let's make sure the supply chain understands what we need for the next 10 years. And a great example is we're in the process of refurbishing our Beck hydro station, and it's a 15-year program. And traditionally, we would go out with the first 2 units, contract for it, buy all the parts, and then we'd contract separately for the second 2 units. And we've taken a view, we're going to contract for 15 years, and we're going to give people certainty that we're going to go do that. And there's off-ramps, if they don't perform, We have the ability to off-ramp them. But the supply chain has the certainty to say, I'm going to expand my manufacturing because I know I've got 15 years of work here. And that kind of thing is really important, I think, especially as we're facing what we're facing today. We're also collaborating with industry. So with Bruce Power, with Hydro One, with Toronto Hydro, Electra, we've formed an industry group where we're looking at where do we buy the same thing, and maybe each individual company doesn't buy enough to actually drive an expansion in manufacturing. But if you add it all together and we all commit together, it is enough. And so, there was an announcement on Northern Transformers a few weeks ago where they were expanding their facility. And that's really because the industry is getting together and making sure supply chain understands all of the needs in totality.
Yeah. Question from the floor. You spoke about the North. Kind of an unfair question, but we'll ask anyway. How long till we aren't burning diesel for power, given it's a geopolitical import?
Whew, that's a tough question.
I know, it is.
Because diesel in the North, that requires grid-connected, which is not my expertise. But we are certainly looking at what can we do. So developing hydro in the North, that requires transmission lines to come up the Moose River Basin. And what we're looking at is how do you maximize the value out of that? So are there opportunities to build wind farms, for instance, along that transmission line so that you're not just paying for a transmission line to get hydro out, but you're actually building an infrastructure around it that helps the communities up there, helps the First Nations, and also helps spread the cost of the infrastructure requirements, roads and transmission lines, across a greater number of megawatts.
Yeah, and as you said before, you're there to provide advisory services as well. You can always help in terms of letting other communities figure out their way forward because you have the expertise. So that's one way of doing it. We mentioned a couple of your projects, but I'd love for you to give us an update on Darlington and Wesleyville. Sure.
So maybe I'll start with Wesleyville. So we had an announcement last week, I think. I don't know, the time seems to fly. Well, let's call it last week. About the Nuclear Discovery Center.
Okay.
So we have just opened the Nuclear Discovery Center in Port Hope. So for the first time since the 1970s, we are adding a community to our nuclear portfolio. So this will be the first new nuclear community since Ontario Hydro was building Darlington in the 70s and 80s. So it's a massive milestone. And so we opened the center in the heart of Port Hope so that people can engage, come in, understand what we're doing, understand nuclear, and really help build that, the vibe that, hey, this is going to be great for the community. We love it, we understand it, and build that support for us. So that's a critical step for us. We're also preparing, our major milestone for this year on Wesleyville is the initial project description, which is the first step in the federal environmental assessment process. So we will file that by the end of this year, and that will really kick off the environmental review requirements for the Wesleyville site and start us down that path. We're in the process right now of reviewing drafts with the First Nations. I talked about that. We do things together, and so that's where you put your money where your mouth is, and we're doing that and reviewing that with them together.
Cool. Different topic, but not quite a different topic. Another area in which OPG has really stepped into, I would say, it's medical isotopes.
Yes.
So little update on where you are with those and how you're planning on to hopefully continue down that path.
Yeah, it's funny how important isotopes are becoming to us, not just from a business perspective, but social license. And they are critical to, fighting cancer, to the medical industry. And so we have just finished installing on our Darlington facility the equipment to be able to harvest cobalt-60. So we have harvested cobalt-60 in our Pickering plant for probably 20, 30 years. And so, but we were shutting Pickering, so we didn't want to leave a gap in the market. So moving that to Darlington. But almost bigger is we've installed a mechanism on one of the units at Darlington that allows us to put targets directly into the reactor online. Mm-hmm. So when we harvest cobalt-60, the unit has to be down, it has to be in an outage. You only take an outage every 2 to 3 years. So, once every 3 years, you get to harvest your cobalt-60. This new mechanism actually allows you to stick something in the reactor and take it out online. So we have different isotopes that we're looking at, moly-99, lutetium-177, and yttrium-90.
Very good.
There. See, those are the most difficult words to say. I'm glad we've shortened moly because I'm not sure I can say the full
Moly's a whole different thing. Yeah. Our kids may think of a different thing when we say moly.
Yes, they probably do. So always put the 99 after it.
That means it's really good.
Yeah. But this is an important piece because this is unique to CANDO. We can do this. We can put it in the reactor for 7 days, take the target out, go and harvest it, and have a continual supply of these medical isotopes.
And so important. It's for diagnostics, it's for cancer treatments, it's for all the things that we need to have to keep our healthcare system
And the new
rolling.
system is so flexible that as new things get developed and we find different ways to cure cancer, we will be able to actually use the same system and just put the target in for however many days it needs to cook before it comes out.
From the audience, financial question. Are you confident the private sector partnerships are the right way to go? And will there be enough money to do what you see is needed to do? And what are the role of pension funds?
I think the role of pension plans is to come and invest with us.
Okay.
To be fair to the pension plans, I think, one of the things we focus on in our financing strategy is actually de-risking projects. Mm-hmm. So we need to get nuclear projects in particular to a point where a pension plan looks at them and says, I'm happy to invest. And our part in that is really making sure we can prove that we know how to do it on time and on budget. So that track record of refurbishment is critical. I think proving that we can get through the regulatory processes we need in a timely manner. Because that often is one of the biggest challenges is time is money, and if you don't get your approval on time, you're already behind the 8 ball when you're starting the project. So those kind of things we can actively work to de-risk. And then I think, we will bring the private financing along the journey, and at the right time, I expect that they would be eager to invest.
Excellent. I'm sure CIBC has a few points of view on that, too. That's a good thing. Somebody wants to know, how does OPG measure public support and sentiment around nuclear and gas power?
So we do public surveys quite frequently, and I don't have our latest data because I know we just finished it last week, so I'm looking forward to it. But we do public surveys quite frequently to understand public sentiment and have it broken down. Like, it's interesting to me that on nuclear public sentiment, women are much less supportive of nuclear than men. And so that helps us to say, okay, how are we going to, what is it that they need to believe, or they believe that isn't true, that we can go after and try and start to influence. So yes, we do it both on natural gas and in nuclear. By community.
Is it still true, though, that the postal codes closest to the actual facility are the highest in approval? And the further out you get, it's the less approval?
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, because I think that the closer you are to a nuclear plant, the more likely you have somebody who works there, and you understand sort of how it works better. And you're hopefully have come on our site. We have these amazing power expos every September that if you haven't been to it before, I highly suggest you go, because it is your chance to get onto a nuclear site, in September, we were taking tours around the SMR construction. You could have gone into the Pickering control room simulator and understood what does the control room look like, how do the operators actually manage the equipment. So really good learning, and I think we get a lot of the nearby community in and understanding that. And again, it's about education.
Yeah. Last question, and it's going to be on education, kind of sort of on education. What advice would you have to specifically young women who want to get into this sector? Because you're an engineer, I'm a chemist. Oh, you're not an engineer. I thought you did engineering.
No.
My bad.
No. Finance. I have a finance
still
background.
a bad place for women anyway. But just in general, any advice to women who may be interested in the nuclear industry in terms of science?
Yeah, it is a phenomenal industry. When I look at my career personally, like I came in with a finance background, sort of commercial, managed to do some phenomenal things. Like Krista mentioned the very first Bruce Power lease, which was an incredible experience for me. I was very young. Krista often says we were 10 when we were doing that project. Maybe not that young. But the ability to learn, and one thing I will say about OPG is they really will give you the opportunity to learn. So I've been able to jump around from commercial stuff. You know, I was involved in building Portland's energy center, the gas plant. You know, have worked in nuclear and ran our hydro fleet, like all sorts of different things that, you know, you may not have, I certainly didn't think I'd be able to do when I started my career. I was a finance girl.
Yeah.
And so it has been amazing. And I think that in general, the electricity sector is like that. If you're curious, if you're a good leader, you can find your way through and go and do some really interesting stuff. And I'll tell you, we're going to do some incredibly interesting stuff in the next 20 years. It's going to be amazing.
Well, I feel very comfortable and very confident that OPG is going to get it done. So thank you very much for spending time with us today, Nicolle. Everybody, Nicolle Butcher.
Thank you.
Nicolle, on behalf of Canadian Club Toronto, thank you for sharing your insight on how Ontario power generation is driving energy innovation and ensuring a reliable and sustainable future for Canadians. Your visionary leadership and commitment to collaboration are helping to strengthen Canadian energy resilience and prosperity. And to the Honourable Lisa Raitt, thank you for your gifted moderation. We always love having you at Canada's podium. Your experience and ability to bring these conversations to life in a warm way is really wonderful. Thank you so much. Before we close, let me share a preview of our upcoming events. On November 6th, we welcome Mr. Mirko Bibic, President and CEO of Bell Canada. And on November 10th, we are pleased to host Her Worship Olivia Chow, Mayor of Toronto. And on November 13th, we launch Canada's Next Move, a bold new series exploring how Canada can thrive in the face of today's challenges. We kick off with a dynamic conversation on our economy featuring Dawn Desjardins, Chief Economist from Deloitte, Bryce Seschuk of Global Live Capital, and Michael Serbinis of League in conversation with Sean Spear from The Hub. This five-part series will inspire big ideas and fresh thinking, and we hope you'll join us for these discussions. Please visit CanadianClub.org for details and consider becoming a member if you haven't already done so. And once again, a special thank you to our presenting sponsor, Torys LLP, and event sponsors, Aecon, Can-Do Energy, CIBC, and PwC Canada, and to our production partner, BBC Live, for their expert support. Members and guests, thank you for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we look forward to hosting you again soon.